Tens of thousands of Hizb ut-Tahrir supporters packed a Jakarta stadium, calling for a caliphate or unified Islamic state to govern the entire Muslim world. It was billed as featuring international speakers, but at least two of them weren't there. Imran Wahid from Britain and Sheikh Ismail Al-Wawa from Australia.
And impeccable behaviour. Not everyone who turned up at the conference today has full membership, but it's a sign that the party is doing well.
Single Muslim government across the Islamic world. Ismail Yusmanto, spokesman for Hizb ut-Tahrir, called on Muslims around the world to unite.
We call for unity among Muslims all over the world, including Shiites and Sunnis, because distinction between them only profits the enemies of Islam.
Though radical in its
Up to 90,000 supporters of the hardline Islamic group Hizb ut-Tahrir have rallied in Jakarta, sounding alarm bells within the Indonesian government. A Sydney sheikh who'd been due to speak at the rally was refused entry into Indonesia and is demanding an explanation.
Tens of thousands of Hizb ut-Tahrir supporters packed a Jakarta stadium, calling for a caliphate or unified Islamic state to govern the entire Muslim world. It was billed as featuring international speakers, but at least two of them weren't there. Imran Wahid from Britain and Sheikh Ismail Al-Wawa from Australia. Speaking on the group's British website, the sheikh says he was detained briefly at Jakarta airport before being put on the next plane back to Sydney.
They said that the government took a decision just 2 days ago that they don't allow the international speakers to come inside the country and to take part in that conference. And really they have no explanation why.
There are people.
Hizb ut-Tahrir is banned in some parts of the world but not in Australia. The group's Sydney spokesman says Sheikh Al-Wawa has visited Indonesia 3 times over the past 5 years without any trouble.
It is quite appalling and it should be condemned in the harshest of terms, the Indonesian government, for its actions.
People all calling for the same thing, a caliphate, a single, united Islamic state. Not everyone believed that Hizb ut-Tahrir would be able to fill Jakarta's enormous stadium. It's only been operating openly here since 2000. But the party is good at bringing in supporters and keeping them. Its members are seen as more committed than those of many other Islamist groups here. The conference today was, yes, a chance to spread the word, but it was also a chance to show off their support. If the audience turnout was impressive, not so the speakers lined up to address them. One by one over the past few days, 7 of the delegates invited to speak here dropped out. 2 of them, Hizb ut-Tahrir members from Britain and Australia, were stopped from entering Indonesia at all. Organisers say they're disappointed, but they're probably not that surprised. The West routinely attacks Islam, they say, and only an Islamic caliphate can fight back.
Dear Muslim brothers, there are people who are there, who are trying to destroy the confidence that we have in Islam. They're trying to weaken our resolve. This is not enough for we to gather here. We need to carry this message forward.
On the pitch this morning, actors replayed some of the injuries delivered to Muslims by America and its allies. Hizb ut-Tahrir says it's not an extremist organisation. It doesn't have a military wing, and there's no evidence it's involved in violence. But it has enemies as well as supporters, those who say it's a nursery school for terrorists, that its agenda is too hardline and its rhetoric offensive. Becoming a member of Hizb ut-Tahrir isn't easy. It usually takes years of study and impeccable behaviour. Not everyone who turned up at the conference today has full membership, but it's a sign that the party is doing well. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Jakarta.
Crowds file into the Bung Karno Stadium in Jakarta. They're here to attend a conference hosted by radical international Muslim group Hizb ut-Tahrir. The group calls for the revival of the caliphate, a single Muslim government across the Islamic world. Ismail Yusmanto, spokesman for Hizb ut-Tahrir, called on Muslims around the world to unite.
We call for unity among Muslims all over the world, including Shiites and Sunnis, because dissension between them only profits the enemies of Islam.
Though radical in its beliefs, the group says it does not support violence in achieving its goal. Several Arab and Central Asian countries have banned the group. However, its popularity has increased in Indonesia in recent years. Indonesian authorities are reported to have refused entry to 2 speakers that were due to talk at this year's conference.
The organisers are very disappointed because 2 foreign speakers have been barred from entering Indonesia. They were from Australia and Britain. We are very disappointed and we are protesting this.
This year's International Caliphate Conference drew approximately 80,000 people from around the globe. Dara Burke, Reuters.
At least 80,000 people have turned out in the Indonesian capital Jakarta to rally in support of Islamic law.
Since the fall of the dictator General Suharto in 1998, there have been growing calls for a stricter religious code in Indonesia, but the majority still favours secularism. In the world's most populous Muslim nation, a call for Islamic law. Tens of thousands of people turned out on Sunday, rallying in the capital. Sharia law is a controversial subject here. Some local governments have already implemented Sharia, but Indonesia is also home to millions of Hindus, Buddhists and Christians.
Sharia law doesn't fit in this country. There are so many ethnic groups and religions here. Islam is the majority, but there are others, so it just doesn't fit.
Indonesia has long been considered a moderate Muslim country, but it's now struggling to determine its religious identity. Sunday's rally is all part of an international conference staged by the conservative Islamic group Hizbut Tahrir.
Indonesia telah dipimpin oleh sekularisme, sistem sekuler sejak Indonesia merdeka.
Indonesia has been living under secular ruling since it gained independence, and we've never had anything but misery and poverty. That's why we are fighting to replace the secular system with an Islamic one.
Banned in parts of the Middle East and Europe, Hizbut Tahrir is dedicated to establishing an Islamic caliphate, but says it does not advocate violence.
Sejak 90-an, pertengahan 90-an muncul Hizbut Tahrir.
Hizbut Tahrir showed up in the mid-90s and developed very quickly through universities and villages. They are booming very fast, and their militancy is extraordinary.
In Indonesia, support is growing for conservative Islamic groups like this, but the major political parties continue to steer clear of the issue. Nonetheless, religion is expected to feature heavily in the country's next election. Well, the State Islamic University Professor Azumadi Azra in Jakarta says the views expressed at that conference are not necessarily representative of the rest of the country.
The mainstream Muslim organization like Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah do not represent in the conference, and in fact the leaders of this so-called Khilafat conference are only people from Hizbut Tahrir.
But regardless of what you're saying, religious conservatism is manifesting itself in other ways in Indonesia at the moment, particularly in terms of political influence.
To some extent, yes, because you can observe increased religiosity, increased Islamicity among Muslim population in general. But in the last 2 elections, in 1999 and 2004, the winners of these elections were secular party. And then most of the members of these secular parties are Muslims.
An estimated 80,000 people gathered in the Indonesian capital Jakarta Sunday for a conference calling for a pan-Islamic state. The conference is hosted by Hizbut Tahrir, a radical international Muslim group. The group wants to strengthen Muslims' commitment to revive the Caliphate, a single Muslim government across the Islamic world. Dr. Salim Frederick of Hizbut Tahrir in Denmark.
There are people who are there, who are trying to destroy the confidence that we have in Islam. We need to carry this message from every corner, from the east to the west, so that on Yawm al-Qiyamah we can be proud.
Hizb ut-Tahrir is a Sunni organization with an estimated 1 million members. It was founded in Jerusalem in 1953 and is banned in some Southeast Asian and Arab countries, as well as in a number of European countries. Hizb ut-Tahrir has denied links to violent Islamic militants and allegations of anti-Semitism.